Welcome to the Big Money Stylist podcast. I wish I could start without laughing, but I can't.
It's because we always have like back banter and then we're like, shit, like let's just start the show.
We should probably just edit all of that out. So, look, if you guys saw the bloopers of what happened behind the scenes,
you'd be like, we're never watching the show again.
our own company would fire us. Good thing you own it. So,
So
who's not getting fired? We're not getting fired.
We're fine. It's totally safe.
So
last week
hey,
was
wait a
great
minute
show.
though. I don't want to talk about last weekend. I want to talk about something else.
Okay.
NBR went nationwide, guys.
What?
NBR for 5-6 years now has only been held in California at DKW.
I'm gonna
Stylist.
pat myself on the back. I'm gonna pat you on the back.
Thank you. I'll take the pat. Wait, I'm gonna pat you on
Okay,
the back
let's
now.
pat.
Let's pat each other on the back. But guys, it's only ever been held at DKW Styling
I know.
Salon. It's only been held here in California. It's only been held by you, or honestly me at this point.
Yep.
It's always been one of us. It's changed. NBR went to motherfucking North Carolina, and it was not led by you, and it was not led by me.
That's
It
a
was
monumental. You know what Garrett said to me today? He's like, not today, the other day. He's like, congratulations, you did what I couldn't do with Warrior. And I was like, what? Can you tell me that
You're
again?
like,
Wait, I turn the volume. Wait, what?
do you want to know what's so crazy? When I was talking to Candace, our trainer in North Carolina, I sat with her and we were talking about like how a lot of things have changed and evolved. And I told her, I said, well, Garrett didn't want this to happen. And she was like, what? I said, Garrett said trainers don't work.
Because it didn't work with Warrior.
Exactly. And I go, and Garrett said it to me, Danielle, he's like, hey, you guys can try. Like, these would be your people, but trainers don't work. Trainers don't work. And I go, and I would look at him, I'm like, trainers fucking work. They work.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm a trainer. Like, I work,
But
it
this
works.
is so different. I feel like NBR, we're selling an ATM. I'm not like selling a have-it-all lifestyle.
Well, with NBR, it's a very specific skill set.
Yes.
With Warrior, the reason it doesn't work is because you have to be a Garrett or you have to be a Sam. You have to be good at knowing everything, every problem, every fucking emotion,
Right.
just all the shit they
Well,
go
and
through.
every trainer is going to be different, and same inside of our family. Like every
sure.
trainer has its different element, but the one thing that we all cohesively have together is the tool of natural beaded rose, and that's why it works, and that's why we'll be able to continue to push the brand and continue to do these nationwide classes.
Well, I'm just stoked. I'm really it took about 5 minutes into the first class. It was Monday morning, and I sat down with her on Sunday. We sat on the phone for hours, and I'm like, okay, this is how classes could start. And I didn't give her any answers. I was basically like, I need to see what you do because it's been, she knows she kind of has to be the next me. Like, you have to be able to like sit on the fence and do everything. And I said, I'm like, I just need to see what you do and what you come up with. And she ran it by me. I'm like, great, do that. You go for it.
Right.
And when she started, I sat there just watching from her front desk, like working on my computer. And I ended up texting her CFO, Jeff, and I was like, I think I'm going to cry. He's like, why? I'm like, my baby. I'm like, because we did it. So good. I'm like, we did it. And I'm so proud of Candace, and I'm proud of Danielle, and I'm proud of me. And we motherfucking did it. And he's like, well, enjoy it. And I'm like, I got to reel in my tears for the next 8 hours, but I'll be fine. It was, but
No,
legit.
It's true. It's true, though. I feel like a lot of things that I see is like people will say, well, I want to do a class in North Carolina. I want to do a class in Alabama. I want to do a class in Chicago. And I'm like, there's only one of me, and I got 3 kids, and I'm not willing to just make everybody be a trainer. And people even now will say, well, how do you be a trainer? And we talked about this on one of our other podcasts. You show up. You don't get to be a trainer by going through a certain process. You're hand selected by Ani and I based on how you show up. And so it's so cool because these were artists that actually, they'd been doing NBR for a lot of them like 3 to 5 years. Yeah.
Years.
3 to 5 years. And so I just kind of kept watching them. And then the minute I knew I wanted to bring on more trainers, I'm like, you guys stood out to me. Your work's phenomenal. You as individuals are amazing trainers. And not only that, but they were all very established inside of their careers, which is super important for me as a trainer because they're looking for more than just like the popularity of being a trainer. They're really looking for a tribe. They're really looking for that purpose. And I think that's a cool place to be in business where you're not just doing it to collect a paycheck, but you're actually looking for purpose behind what you're doing and believe in the company that you are working for. So it's just cool to be in that space.
Well, and I think it's so cool. Candace and I, after the class finished and, she was packing everything up and the students had come up to her and they were like, oh my God, thank you so much. Can we get pictures with you? Ani, can we get pictures with you? Which, by the way, hysterical. One of the girls came up to me. She's like, hi. I'd been there for 2 days and she didn't say a fucking word to me in 2 days. And finally, as it's the end of class and we're taking photos, she's like, I listened to the podcast with you and Danielle, and I know, like, I don't know you, but I feel like I know you. How's Ronald? I'm like, I was like, thank you for asking. She's like, I just didn't want it to be weird because, like, I don't, like, know you, but, I'm like, I know.
Yeah.
But it was crazy because, the students, there's such gratitude. And I even brought Candace up at the end of the class and I was like, guys, because she taught them the 2-clap boom. It was
I
so
saw
rad.
that.
It was
I
so
saw that,
fun.
yeah.
And I told her, I'm like, we need to give a big one for Candace. I'm like, because imagine you guys are sitting here learning this. Imagine having to know it so well that you have to teach someone else. I go, who here feels like they could teach anyone? And they were all like, literally laughed. They're like, that's a fucking joke. And so we did a big 2-clap for Candace. And after they left, her and I are sitting there talking and I said, I go, Carlos has asked me many times. He said, how do you do it? Because I feel like I've had it kind of gnarlier than everyone because initially I was trained by Garrett and then there was like chaos and hurricanes and so much. Like I was trained, I feel, under the gnarliest of conditions.
You were the first. There was no structure. It was just like fucking show up.
And it was by Garrett of all people. So then I wasn't even trained by like a woman who has some sense of like gentleness. It was Garrett who's like he admitted
Imagine being married to him.
No, thank you. I would fucking kill him. But he had even said, he's like, I've trained Ani like a warrior. And I'm like, I'm aware. So I told Candace, I said, Carlos has always asked me.
But it set such a standard in you. You
goddamn right. And
yeah.
now I told Candace, I go, that same standard is set in you. But I told her, I said, Carlos had always asked me, like, how do you do it, Ani? Like when it's hard, when you and Danielle weren't getting along, like what has always made you stay? And I always told him, like, it's my students. Like I believe in what we do so much. I'm like, I will never give up on them. I'm like, for me to leave, Danielle would have to be like, I fucking hate you. You're dead to me. You're fired. Don't you dare show back up because otherwise, like I will never leave. I told her, I go, and now you understand that feeling, don't you? Because because the students came up and were like, thank you, you've helped me. And she looked at me, she goes, I finally understand.
Well, and that's why you're the lead trainer, though, to be honest. I mean, because you care that much, you know what I mean? And that, for me as a business owner, that's so cool to hear. Because, like, there are some days where we're like, no, fuck you. But it's like the most...
You're wrong. No, you're wrong.
It's like the most perfect combination ever, and we've really come to this cool place of respect with one another, and especially this last year. But I think that's cool to hear. Like, because for me, that was always my motivator. I was like, everybody's selling hand-tied extensions, like, whatever. I actually want them to succeed. Because even Garrett's business started to take off and go crazy, and I could have stepped back and been like, it's too stressful, and I don't want to do it, and fuck everybody, it's you guys, it's not me. But instead, I was like, you know what? My students' results are a direct reflection of me. And when I felt that and I took on that ownership, I wanted people to succeed that much more. And so that is always the goal in education, is like, how do I help somebody else win? And that purpose-driven path is really what pushes us to really excel and to build the brand what it needs to be and what it is, the direction that it's actually going.
Yeah, and I just know I had experienced, and I did experience and still do, so much freedom from something that you wouldn't think, but it started with literally fucking hair extensions. And I've always said this, but I knew for me to keep that to myself and not be able to like share and instill that in others, like that sense of like freedom and confidence and like love and just like power in my own life, I'm like, that would have been the worst, like that's the most selfish thing I could have ever done. And so that's why when I was sitting there talking to Candace, I was like, that's why I know Carlos wanted something else that was like, no, but like give me the clue. I'm like, this is it. Like you have to, I love not just what I do, but to hear students message me and be like, I'm taking 3 months off because I'm having a baby and I don't give a shit. Like that, I'm like my little heart, I can't take it.
It goes back to like, I remember having like this feeling, and I think a lot of us probably face a lot of trials inside of our careers, relationships, whatever. And we just think like, fuck it, like I'm over it. I'm not going to do it anymore. And I remember the moment I decided to like take ownership of my brand and really like dive all in was when I literally like had a voice come to me and say like, by quitting now, you would be selling short. Like you would be a sellout. Like you have no idea the impact that you'll make on other people by quitting now, by saying like, I'm done. You know what I mean? So that to me has always been such a driving force to say like, okay, well, if I could accomplish at the level I'm at and help so many people, what's the next level look like? And how many more people can have this tool and have that success? And I think that when you go in with that mindset, you always live in abundance. And you'll always have success in your life. So it's fucking ride or die. Remember last year I told you, I said, Ani, it's me and you.
Goddamn right.
And I don't know if you believed me at the time, but I saw it. Like I literally was like, Garrett was leaving, like my staff was changing, and for a second I was just me and you, and I was like, it's always fucking been me and you. And we really had to like build back up that that trust and just work together. And now I feel like when we work together, we do a podcast together.
Dude, done.
Like people say outside, like you guys are you work so well together. We're so in sync because
our camera guy just said it like an
Yeah.
hour ago. Yeah. And it was, 2018 was really like my first year here. And oh man, was that the nar? That was to this day, I look
dark
back at
year.
that year. Oh,
the
girl,
dark year.
no year will ever be darker than 2018.
That was a dark year.
But even then, like, it's so funny, and I won't go into like conversations Garrett and I had, but he had like told me things later on. He's like, oh yeah, all that happened on purpose for sure. He's like, I did all of that on purpose, da-da-da. And I sat there and I was like, you know what? I go, it doesn't matter. I go, nothing you said, nothing you did, nothing you took away. I go, I was never fucking leaving. Like, until the day you guys looked at me and were like, you're fucking fired, don't ever come back. I was like, nothing you ever did was gonna make me leave. He's like, well, I fucking know that now. I'm like, nope.
You know what I told
I'm like a
Garrett?
cockroach. I
You know
never
what
leave.
I told Garrett last night at dinner is I said, I said, everybody's a unicorn and you see people's unicorn. That's your gift. Like, even if they don't see it. And I was like, and guess what? Sometimes it's a blessing and it's a curse because sometimes you want it more than they do. And sometimes you're so like tough love because you see their unicorn. And I was like, and that's such a brilliant gift to have, but not at the expense of giving up your own unicorn.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
And that's why even I told Candace because, I know where the trainers are going to sit and who they're going to be. And we talked about it last podcast, which by the way, I got so many messages from artists going, I'm the next platform artist. You ready? Because I'm ready to show up. I'm ready. I'm excited. Especially one that I'll talk to you about later. But when she sent me an audio today, she's like, I just want you to know I'm fucking ready for this. And her work is you know who she is.
Okay.
It's fucking beautiful. But I was like dying laughing. But I told Candace, I said, my expectations for you were already high because in my mind, like, you're the next me. Not that I'm perfect. Don't get it twisted. Just my part in the company, how I split both BMS and
Yeah,
NDR.
she kind of does the both.
Yeah, I'm really you can do both, but you prefer the hair, and I can bounce wherever I'm needed. I told her, I'm like, you need to be the next me, and I told her after that class, I said, I just want you to know, now I saw what you're capable of. Guess what? This year just got 10 times fucking harder for you because my expectations for you just got 10 times higher because you fucking showed up.
Right.
You
It's
showed
like a
up.
whole nother level of showing up.
Oh, yeah. It's like, guess what? It was going to be not an easy year, but now it's going to be way fucking harder because, and I even told her, I sent her audio today. I'm like, I need this from you by the end of today. I need you to create this program by Valentine's Day. Like, it's game on now.
What were we talking about even like the last podcast and we were like, let's talk about for another show? Was it the dynamic of like working with other
Well, we were talking about boundaries, just in
that's right.
general, because I know we got off topic, but I'm so proud.
No, it was a good off-topic moment.
But yeah, we were really last podcast we were talking about boundaries and how obviously like there's definitely boundaries like you and Garrett when it's husband and wife who work together, but then also like how we had to find boundaries where like I don't allow anybody to text me work things. My text messaging is for private moments, or not like that sounded gross. My text messaging is for like but
hey,
like,
you want to go to dinner? Girls' night,
Thank you.
Vegas.
Vegas! We're legit going to Vegas in a few weeks, so we're
Yeah.
stoked. But
Dirty 30.
it's me.
It's not me. I'm not 30. She's
I'm still in my 20s,
30.
guys. I got a few more weeks. February 6th, guys. But even with that, just really creating boundaries is not easy.
Right.
But, and even like, I can talk about it with me and you, because I know guys, like because we have certain apps that we use for messaging. Voxer is one of them. It's like a walkie-talkie app.
Yeah.
And it's really easy because when you send audio message, oh, fuck me. If they're 2 minutes long, then you're like stuck listening for 2 minutes. But on
the
Voxer,
Voxer,
you can fast forward
it's
times
like
four.
it's like a podcast when you push it in like fast forward and you're like, I just consume so much content in so little time.
Which I feel like no one can fast forward ours because of how fast I talk, but
I know when I put yours in fast speed, I'm like, nope. Yours I only go to 2. You know whose goes to 4?
Jeff. Some days I have Jeff on 4X and I'm like, this is 4 times your speed?
Yeah.
Fuck me.
It sounds like a normal pace.
I might talk
You know
faster.
what's so funny though is I listen to our podcast every week and I listen to it into two times speed. And when the video editing guys send me the regular clips and I listen to his talk, I'm like, why am I talking like that? Like I just
What is
so
happening?
But like going back to boundaries though, like honestly, even it goes into like when you're a trainer and you love what you do so much, you have to create personal boundaries for yourself or you burn out.
Ooh,
So I think
yes.
people think of boundaries of just like, oh, I'm going to separate business and pleasure, or I'm going to separate wife and husband or whatever. But it's literally you have to set boundaries for yourself, or you can actually self-sabotage because you're drowning because you're so overwhelmed by not creating boundaries for yourself. So you self-sabotage so that you have to like fuck everything up and then figure out how to do it correctly.
Well, and here's like a perfect example, not just like of our texting. Because like I was saying, guys, like I don't allow anyone, like it doesn't matter if it's Danielle, the CFO, like no one can text me work things. If they do, I respond with, let's take this to Voxer.
Taking this to Voxer.
Taking this Voxer. And everyone knows that means like, oh fuck, she's not going to listen anymore. But even like for an example, Danielle's sacred day is Saturday. My sacred day is Sunday. So there'll be times where Saturday morning I'm like, hey Danielle, da 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 da. And then like she doesn't listen to my Voxer and I'm like, check Voxer. She's like, I'm busy. It's Saturday. So no.
But Sunday I get the itch.
And then Sunday I'm like, it's Sunday. I'll respond to you tomorrow.
But you know what? I even set up boundaries within my team. I said, listen, you guys, like part of my personal brand, and we did a whole thing of branding today, but part of my personal brand, I was like, hey, you know what? Do what you love, but also create time to spend with those you love. Mm-hmm. Take time to have time for yourself, like whatever it is, like creating that balanced life and those boundaries with inside of that. And so for me, like I even told my staff at one point, I'm like, listen, I may Voxer you on a Sunday. If you don't respond, that's fine, because I like to be respectful of people's time. I'm like, okay, I might be thinking about work and I might want to send you a message. And so I had to even tell my teams that, because they'd be like, oh, it's Danielle. I can't like.
I have to respond. I have to respond.
And so I finally was like, no, I don't want you to feel like you have to work on the weekend. Just know my brain's, because it's my business. And I'm sure you in a lot of ways are the same way.
Yes.
It's hard to turn it off. Like, you're like, I got to unplug. You're like.
But sometimes an idea sparks and you're like, I'm like, if I don't tell Danielle this right now, I'm not going to remember. I'm going to be so fucking mad later.
Same thing if I'm like, if I have an idea or whatever, like it's even been the middle of the night before and I wake up, I'm like, oh, fuck, that's a good idea. And like, Garrett's all, are you okay? And I'm like, voice noting things in my phone at 3 a.m. He's like, are you talking about funnels? What are you talking about?
I sent you audios at 4 a.m. and I'm like, I hope her phone's on silent.
No. And I always turn my phone on airplane mode because I hate mornings. I literally, like, if the sun's not up, I'm not up. Like, it's,
How you doing, Vegas, girl?
No, I seriously, like, it's so funny because at 7 a.m., that's when I get up, because that's when the sun gets up.
Oh, wow. No. And if I get up and the sun's already up, I feel like I wasted my whole fucking day.
Oh, no. So I bet you get up at like 5:30.
I'm up at 5:30. How dare you? It's 5 o'clock. This morning I was up at 4:30 and I was like, I'm ready. Let's do it.
That's how Garrett is. Like, his alarm goes off every morning at 4:30 and I'm always like, oh, it's like the middle of the night. Like, it's rough.
You're like, put it away. How are you going to do ClickFunnels, girl? Class starts at 9.
That's fine. I can get somewhere by 9.
Can you though?
I mean, it's rough. Like, I mean, is there a time difference in Tennessee or?
They're technically 2 hours ahead of us.
So I'll be fine.
So
9 will be like 11.
No, ma'am.
Oh, shit.
9 for them is 7 for us. So you'll need to get up 5 our time to be in class by 7 our time.
See, and my brain automatically is like, I'm just not going to go to bed for the night.
Just go to sleep early, you fucking weirdo.
Too early. No.
Oh my God.
Okay, back to boundaries. Man,
we're on one today. We're excited.
I know.
But yeah, I think it's really important, guys, to really find some kind of boundary. Even like myself and my ex, like, and we're still really good friends, so it's fine. But like, even when we were like, there would be times, because he has a way harder time turning off work than I do, because he's an entrepreneur. He owns everything himself. Like, everything falls on him.
Yeah.
So then there'd be times where we're literally sitting at dinner, and the rule has always, for the 2 years we were together, like, no phones, like, for fuck's sake, you know? And
I know, don't you feel like a dick when you're at dinner and you're like, shit, like, and the person's like sitting across the table, like
staring. And girl,
when I see that in restaurants, I'm like, how fucking rude.
And for real, and it's one thing when you're like, I just remembered something I have to say. We've always been so understanding, but when it's like, hold on, let me message this person, like, you have to create some kind of space, because if you're always in work mode, you have no space to actually come up with any kind of ideas. Like, there's no space for creativity at all.
I even because Garrett and I, we used to work together. Now we don't. But
Thank God.
I know, it's been great. We were literally like, our marriage is not great right now, but our businesses are just booming. But no, it got to this place. And it's so hard for those of you that work with your spouse. Like, you have to set such clear boundaries, and it's so hard to go out on date night and not talk about work. I would always, it would get to this place where like Garrett would bring something up and I could immediately feel like his energy shift, and I would because he, like, his energy is so, you could say one thing and you can feel the flux of his energy. You're like,
black to white.
And like, even last night we went to dinner and I said something about his green smoothies and I could feel him go, wow, and set him off. And right then the server came up and I was like, hey, how are you? Yes, I'll take a mule. Like I immediately was like, oh my God, and then I changed the subject. Like, I had to change the subject because I was like, oh my God, like, we have to keep our date night sacred and we can't like talk about anything work related or whatever. You know what I mean?
And that's why I think it's cool that, and because I know even like one of our artists, Allie, one of our platform artists, and she's, on the track to be a trainer for next year. She owns a huge salon and then has her backpack business, and her husband works with her. And that's like, you can't always talk about work. You can be like, hey, and especially like you and Garrett who own separate businesses. It's really cool to be like, oh my gosh,
guess
listen
what
to
I'm
what we
doing.
did this
Yeah,
week.
guess what and that's now we're back in that space finally, because there was like a minute where I was like, we were always talking about the problems of work, and now because we're separate, we can come together and be like, he can be like, oh, we're doing this, and I'm like, oh, we're doing this, and it's just a place of like, I'm excited for you. Or if he has a problem, it's not my problem anymore, and vice
you
versa.
didn't create that problem.
Yeah, so he can vent to me, and I can be like, oh, that sucks, or I can vent to him, but because it's
and
separate,
the hard thing, and I can say this from personal experience, when Garrett was heavily involved, if you would ever have like, I'll just use me as an example, like a bad day with me, and you'd be like, fucking Ani, like this happened today. Oh,
then you would hear about it through Garrett.
I hated your date nights.
Those
were the worst.
No, I had to literally, I felt like I was in this, it's like when you're mad at your boyfriend or your girlfriend, and then you go tell your mom, and then your mom like doesn't like your boyfriend anymore. I felt like that's how it was. So I was like, I want to vent to him, but like I can't vent to him because he's so protective, and now he's going to go like ream whoever, and then they're going to know that I talked about you, and I'm like.
When you and I were like in our struggle mode, your date nights would give me a stomach ache. The minute I was like, oh fuck, she's getting ready. I'm like, here it goes, 2-hour countdown until Garrett messaged me. And so help me God, it happened all the time.
Because I'd always be posting date night.
And I'm like, oh no. And then I'd get a box either from Garrett that night or like a message that night or the next morning going, with this and that. And I wanted to be like, don't try and fucking frame me out. You might as well just tell me Danielle's mad at me. I already know by your fucking 5-minute audio message telling me how shitty I am. Like, shut up, it's fine. That was
rough.
That
was part of the dark years.
A dark year. Nah, girl. They weren't years. It was 1 year.
The dark year. But now we've come full circle, and we've really created boundaries.
The year was 2018.
Where we can work together, but we can also have fun and be friends.
And I think it's made it easier for everybody. I feel like there is such a difference in you and Garrett now. Yeah. And then obviously like you and I, like we made our own way without him. Like that great for him, but I feel like we made our own way. But it does make such a difference to know, like, or even like if you and I disagree, I can be like, no, Danielle, like because da 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 da. And I know it's always just gonna end at a conversation, literally not even like an argument. It's just a conversation between me and you.
Right.
And then even the other night, you and I were voxing about filming or models or something. And then we were texting about Vegas, and I was crying. Like I could not handle it.
And they're two totally different tones too. Like now I can understand when people are like, oh, I have so many different, like you compartmentalize your life. You know what I mean?
Yes, and that's how I am.
Yes. And I think that that's very healthy to do, because then you can be like, hey, I can talk about work, I can talk about friendships, I can talk about kids, I can talk about this, and you compartmentalize your life so that you can really create that balance.
Well, and I feel like if you and Garrett had not been able to do that, and bear in mind, guys, like I know we're talking about Danielle and Garrett because obviously they both are two entrepreneurs. They both own two very successful businesses, and Garrett was involved in Danielle's. Danielle never really in Garrett's because whatever.
I'm not a dude, so you know what is so funny? The whole message. I don't have a dick. The whole message of Warrior, though, if you think about it, because I was talking to him about it yesterday. He goes, Warrior wouldn't be Warrior without you, though, because it's about like dating your wife and like the whole message is very much wrapped around what Garrett and I went through as a couple, and him and I trying to understand one another. So Warrior wouldn't even be Warrior if Garrett wasn't married. It would be a totally different message. Who knows what that message would be?
I have seen enough of the videos to know it'd be terrifying.
It would be terrifying.
It would be very scary. But I think it's really cool because what I see, like for all of you that own businesses, whether your partner is or is not involved, or if all you ever do is go home and bitch about it and like there's no space from that, you, I feel, would also end up resenting the company itself, like NBR and DKW, because you'd be like, fuck, I deal with shit at work because work is not always easy. Then you go home and you have a fucking argument with your husband about it, and then your date night is ruined just to go back to work the next fucking day to not be able to talk to your husband the next night.
You're always putting out fires, like always.
You're in a lose-lose situation. Right. And that's why I think it's cool, like even the companies just completely like split and separated. We still have like the occasional person that does like a few things here and there for both, but...
Well, it had even gotten down to like, so Garrett and I, we split the companies last year around this time.
Yeah.
But then we were still using the same teams because Garrett had such a large team of like tech guys and video guys and payroll, like just so many people on his team that I was like, it doesn't make sense for me to go hire out a whole nother team, because when it comes down to it, it's still money out of our family's pockets.
Yeah, that's stupid.
I'm like, yeah, exactly. And even
stupid.
our CEO, Jeff, was like, no, Garrett, that's a bad idea. Like, you're not utilizing the full extent to your teams. Well, then Garrett started kind of getting rid of team members and that kind of thing. And we were still sharing teams, but then I couldn't use they were just his teams, but yet I was still paying for the teams and my business was paying. And so we just had to split. I was like, this is no longer working. I'm feeling held hostage because I can't use my team, which I was told now it's just Warrior team. It's not my team.
But then I felt like that also really put it drove a wedge between you guys, because it wouldn't be Garrett being like, hey, Danielle, just so you know, you can't use these team members anymore. It'd be like, Garrett would go to our CFO and be like, you need to tell Danielle that she can't use them. And then Jeff is like, Danielle, you can't use them. And you're like, fuck that shit. You go tell Garrett. And then you're like, at least you're ballsy to be like, Garrett, we're not fucking doing that. Like, it's just fucking hysterical.
But now I feel like a lot of freedom, like in kind of the separation and like taking, like having the ownership, but also having my own teams and that kind of thing. Because in the beginning, I think the reason I heavily wanted Garrett is because his team was his company was starting to have a lot of success, and I was like, I need Garrett, and Garrett played such a huge role in my business, but I realized the importance of teams. You know what I mean? And I told Garrett this. I said, we will always have our convention called Big Money Stylist. Even though I kind of like rebranded and I changed it to DKW Styling Academy. I'm like, that's the piece of Garrett that I'm like so grateful that you put that together. You helped get it off the ground.
And even like I'm so, because Warrior, Garrett's company with Warrior, they do things like the stack and the fact map and
those tools.
Power production, power protection, and strategic seduction. There are things that Garrett literally created that, men for Warrior, they pay $25,000-$30,000 a year to have access to that. And I think it's really cool that even the last meeting we had of like, hey, we're splitting teams.
But can we still use these tools?
Yeah, I told him because they created this whole new stack app, which doesn't matter what it's about. It's an app that's only for the Warrior team. And I was like, I kind of sat there and I'm like, yeah, when we put them in the stack app, and it was a moment of like, oh no. And I look at him, I'm like, can we still use that? He's like, anything we have, you're always welcome to use. I'm like, cool, okay, because that I think is, to me, that's also a piece of Garrett that will never go away, because he ingrained it so deeply, and he's still the one that trains on it inside of the academy. Like, we were able to use the Warrior videos made by Garrett, so I think it's really cool you guys were able to find a separation, but there's still a real
we got divorced.
Cohesiveness. You got work divorce, not life divorce.
We got work divorce so that we could stay married.
Real
together.
life married.
Real life married.
I love that at the meeting, Garrett looked at me. He's like, "Congrats, you two are married." I'm like, nailed it.
You're like, seems healthier than what's going on here. So
I don't know what's happening over there, but
it's cool too, because now I feel like the vision that I've had, the vision that even you've had, like now I feel like I can see it more clearly. Whereas,
I feel like it's never been more clear in my life, and with you and I, like literally, like just it works perfectly. Like there's no. I'm sorry, my dress just fell off me. We work perfect. Watcha! It's fine. I'm wearing a bodysuit too. I'm so sorry. It doesn't matter what to say. This t-shirt's a bodysuit.
That's cute.
3 people, dude. That's legit. I love anyway, so we'll talk about it later. But
this is the most random show ever.
This is the best show ever. But I think it's really cool that like we found our way, and because like we found our way by ourselves, like with a lot of like collision chaos and like boundaries being put, that now it's like the fog cleared. Right. It was almost like you couldn't see clearly.
Nobody could see clearly.
No, like you couldn't see clearly through like the fog like you believed I was creating. I couldn't see through the fog I thought you were creating. And finally when we were both like, wait, you want the same thing as me? Oh, wait, we have the same vision? It
was just like mapping it out and like, okay, it was like looking, we both want the result, right? It's like looking at the result and then what are the steps in between to get the result? And I think that we are getting too caught up in the details and the steps in between to actually realize that we wanted the same things. And I but I think that happens in relationships too. Like whether you work together, whether it's like somebody you're dating, married or whatever, it's like ultimately like you guys may want the same things, but maybe somebody's not willing to do the steps in between, or your steps in between have like a different outlook or a different way of looking at it.
Think about it. Like when you date, you eventually the topic of marriage and children come up, and some people they're like, hey, I want that in the future, and some people might be like, I don't know, and it's like, wait, you didn't say now.
Yeah.
But there are things that you work towards in business and in relationships and everything, like even inside of like the salon, like we have assistants and they're working towards a full-time chair, and like there's always an outcome and a goal, and I feel that boundaries and very clear communication will always get you there.
Right.
Like Always.
That was good. That was a good full circle. I was literally thinking, I'm like, where's this going? And then you just brought it back in. You're like, boundaries.
I got it.
You're good at that. Like, there it is. You guys can do that. Like me, I'm like, squirrel. Like, I literally lose track of things. But that's why I think you and I work together, because I'll get really excited and like passionate, and I'll go off, and then you can tell when I'm lost, and I look at you and I'm like.
And I'm like, so what Danielle meant to say was bringing it back this way, all the way around.
Why does my brain work that way?
I think you are, to me, you're like a pure artist. You're the visionary.
I am very pure visionary, but I'm super logical too.
Because I think you don't let yourself go. Like, typical artists, I feel, will be like, I have the best idea ever. Listen, and when someone's like, hey, that won't work, they're like,
my follow through is extremely strong.
Yeah, so I feel like that's what works really well. Like, you are a visionary, and you can have big, great visions, but when you tell them to me, I'm like, I hear you some days. But Danielle, for that to be accomplished, let's work backwards. Look at what we have to do. And then some days it's been like, yep, that's not going to fucking happen. And others it's like, we can make it work, but girl, you gonna have to give up. I'm gonna need some of your Fridays all of a sudden.
I know, and then I'm like, shit. Okay, here we are on a Friday.
That's my favorite when we start.
That's why I think this podcast is so random. We literally just finished like 4 hours. Well, you did 4 hours. I only did like an hour.
So much filming.
So much filming today. We're just like on the loopy end of filming.
Well, and that's why I love when I'm like, Danielle, you have to film these 10 videos that are pretty similar. And you're like, wait, what? I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Did you think it was always fun in games? Because it's not.
Creating content though is hard. Like being in front of a camera is hard. It's honestly, you exude so much energy because you're teaching and you're training and you're on camera. But I will tell you, it has helped so much with my communication and just our communication. And I feel like the podcast, I hope and I know that we get a ton of listeners. Like,
yeah,
they love it. I mean, but I would encourage you guys, even articulate your own message, whether it's through a podcast.
Do you know what I think has really helped though? The fact that the entire company does audio messages, that no one really texts. I mean, do you want to know something?
Who texts?
Get no one. Prep your fucking pants for this one really quick. So with the app called Voxer, you can actually look in your phone and it tells you how much time you spent in an app.
Oh, you told me that.
Last week I spent 9 hours in this app listening to fucking messages and sending them back and forth to the point where I text the CFO and I go, I'm gonna fucking commit suicide if I fucking hear this shit one more time. I'm like, I fucking hate it. I'm gonna burn the app down. And he's like,
when you hear that, like that,
and I was like, no.
Don't you want to cringe a little? You're like,
sometimes it gives me a tick and I'm like, fuck this app.
But no, it's good for business.
But it is. But I feel like that's also why our communication is it truly like evolved. because we just talk a lot.
Yeah.
But also it's hours of audio.
Just communication. Communication.
That's it.
Like no matter any business is driven down to one simple fact: is how good is your communication with yourself and your teams and getting what you want.
You and Garrett fight the most when you're not communicating correctly. I yell at team members when something has not been communicated correctly. They yell at me. Well, I don't think anyone actually yells at me. I think Garrett yells at me when things have not been communicated correctly. But I feel like that's when shit goes sideways and it's like, but I told you. And it's like, but I told you, but you didn't. But wait.
I think that's why I don't like texting is because you can't hear somebody's tone.
That happened to me yesterday with Crystal. I texted her and I'm like, oh, I didn't know it'd take this long to do that. And she got real mad at me. And then later I said, hey, you seemed upset. And I sent her an audio and I said, hey, I just want to talk to you. You seemed upset. And she goes, well, when I read this text, I didn't really like that. And I said, I'm so sorry. I'm like, that's not how I meant it.
You were like logically like.
I'm like, this is, well, it was even just, she was just picking up hair. But I was like, this is where I was at because we needed the hair and I had the client and then you were going to go get it. And then it took an hour. And I was like, it doesn't take an hour to go to Danielle's and back.
Yeah.
And that's what I said. I'm like, oh, I didn't know it'd take an hour to get hair. And she read it as like, didn't know it'd take an hour to get hair.
Like, what are you doing? Getting a Starbucks?
Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't know it would take an hour to get hair. And I was like panicking. But that really, that for me is texting can be fucking rough.
You know what's so funny is I don't even text anymore. I voice text.
Your texts are the worst.
Hence my text this morning. What did I say?
You asked me to pat down some balls or something. It was so fucking weird. Yes, you did.
I did not.
You told me to drop down nuts. Yes, you did.
I meant to say jot down some notes, and I voice text everything, and it came out, and I never
told me to drop down nuts.
I said, go ahead and drop down some.
And I was like, I'm sorry, ma'am. What was that?
The funny thing is I'm so guilty of voice texting something and then sending and then being like, oh, fuck, I don't. But it was you, so then it was funny.
It was hilarious.
So go ahead and drop down some nuts. And
with that, we're ending the podcast today. Dropping nuts.
All right, you guys, now let's leave with a positive message. Today, basically, what I want you guys to get out of this crazy shenanigans of who knows what is like prioritize your time so that you're not sinking on a ship. Like if you're feeling overwhelmed, like you can't be putting out fires all day. that nobody likes to do that. So
no,
really,
and just learn to create boundaries and understand that the boundaries, they will ebb and flow some days. Like there are days where even though Danielle doesn't like to work on Saturdays, we do. I don't like to work on Sundays. Some days we do because
Right.
it's necessary. But I'm telling you, by 10 or 11 a.m., we're both like, peace, sucka, see you tomorrow, whatever day it
Right.
is. Your boundaries will change and have, it's like the ocean, like the waves will come and go a little bit and you have to be pliable and move with it, but also understanding there are some hard, dead set boundaries that you also have to stick to in order to keep all of your relationships healthy, to keep you mentally healthy, emotionally, physically, like no boundaries, whether it's with your husband, your staff, your friends, your clients, for fuck's sake, you're screwed.
You have to prioritize your boundaries as well. And I feel like we all have this. Well, not I feel like we all have the same hours in a day, and so it really comes down to what are your boundaries and how are you prioritizing or compartmentalizing your time. So on that, you guys,
Thanks for being here
Thanks
and
for being
our
here.
ridiculous shenanigans-filled podcast.
this was a good one. You guys laughed. You liked it.
Hey, drop these. No. Okay, see you guys
See
next
you
time.
next week.